before we get into really talking about the new Cardfight Vanguard series, we have to address the most important thing this series brings up. We have to deal with the elephant in the room, and that is no looting Lolly Masaki. Do I make myself clear? I do not want another Raftalia situation on our hands, people. None of that. Got it? Look, it's too late for Emmy. The internet kind of ruined her from like day one. Okay? I can accept that. If you want to lewd Chrono's aunt, just go for it. I don't even understand why she's here. Just that is fine. But not Lolly Masaki. I draw the line there, internet. You hear me? I draw the line. Okay? She's a sad little girl who just lost her parents. She deserves hugs and head pats. When she grows up, then you loot her. Okay? But for right now, she is cute little Masaki, she is innocent, and she is pure. Do I make myself clear? Alright, so now that we had that little mental breakdown, Cardfight Vanguard Shin Prequel. I know it has an actual name, but we're all just gonna call it Shin Prequel. I'll remember it later. I think the internet's reaction has been universally the same, and that is, huh? Like, I don't think anyone really saw this coming. A lot of people did think when we saw that silhouette a few months ago, a lot of people did speculate it was Shin, but I don't think anyone really knew it was going to be anything like this. And I think the reason for that is prequels. It's a general problem with prequels as a thing. And that is that prequels, at least to me, are very self-defeating. Because the idea to a prequel is supposed to be you learning more about this character or this world or this aspect of a story. You learn about what got them there. Well, the thing about that is it really doesn't matter how they got there. Because if it was that important, then the writers would have included it in the story that you fell in love with in the first place. Does it matter that Wolverine wears a leather jacket? Nope, but we sure had to see a scene about it in Origins. Does it matter where the xenomorphs come from? Nope, but we got a whole 2 movies dedicated to ruining them. Does it really matter about anything in the Star Wars prequels or anything about Han Solo's backstory? No, it doesn't. None of these things are important because they do not change anything in the actual series and stories we watched the first time. And it really does not matter. And that's sort of the thing about prequels, is that we put so much emphasis on just trying to bring up these backstories and origins that you miss the purpose in the first place. Using the Solo example, Han Solo in the original Star Wars trilogy is this rogue. He doesn't really do anything to help anybody. He's not out to really hurt anybody, but he's in it for number 1. And so at the end of the movie, when he goes in to save Luke Skywalker, and join the rebellion and potentially make his life a hell of a lot harder, it has this special feel to it because it is this guy who is making that courageous decision when he never has before. Solo completely throws this out the window by basically making it Han Solo was never really kind of a in it for himself kind of guy. He was always ultimately the guy who will come in and save the day, even if he's gonna grunt and moan about it. Like, that is what that movie basically says, so it kind of takes away from what is the significance of him doing it in the first place. And that's kind of what you could get into here. Now, Shin as a character, I'm pretty certain is no one's favorite character. So that kind of leads you to a situation of why focus on him? Why do we need to see how he became in charge of Card Capital? Why do we need to see him in his prime glory days as a Vanguard fighter? We know where that ends up. We know it ends up with him just being kind of this goofy guy who runs a card shop. But the thing is, that doesn't have to be a bad thing that he's just the goofy guy who runs the local card shop. The thing is that what made Shin kind of interesting, or at least likable in the original series, was that he was kind of this nurturing type. He was sort of the guy who would, steer you in the right direction, try to help you, be there for you, be friendly, and without having to spend hours of backstory on it, you can kind of speculate why, and it paints a picture in your head of who this guy is. Shin is the guy who basically lost everything. He lost his brother and sister-in-law, the card shop lost its owner, his niece lost her parents. He's this guy who's been surrounded by loss, and in a very extreme way. one of my favorite scenes from the original series is the flashback. Flashbacks are different from prequels because flashbacks are meant to be part of the original narrative. But in the flashback where you see Shin taking over the shop, little Masaki flat out goes to him, "You're keeping the shop open?" And he's like, "Of course I am. This was my brother's place." I know I'm paraphrasing, but it's been a long time. But what's important about the scene is the emotion. Shin's look on his face isn't confidence or goofy happiness. It almost kind of looked like he was kind of just holding on. Like this was something he felt like he had to do. He had to keep the shop open. He had to keep alive his brother's memory and honor what he wanted. And he has to take care of Masaki and help her and get her through her problems. You get all through of this, and now you have this version of the character and his backstory in your head that is way more interesting than anything they can do because it's what you thought of and it's how you got latched onto the character. Or you didn't care and you forgot about it after 5 minutes. But either way, you came to that decision yourself. So when you make a prequel show that tells us that backstory, that fills in this stuff we kind of already assumed, all you're left to do is sit there and scratch your head and be like, what? Like, why does this matter? Why do I need to know this? Why are we wasting screen time? Who cares about a Shin prequel? You already know where he's going to end up in 10 years. You know that he's just the goofy shop owner, and you know that Masaki never really kind of feels better again until she starts befriending Aichi in the group. So what is the point of this? Also, this kind of creates a weird power creep issue and kind of hurts the world building a lot. So 10 years ago, you had this astral plane thing that very clearly is the evolution of the gift mechanic. So where did that go and why is it never referenced again in the future? Yeah, that's just kind of the problem you bring up with this. Now, having said that, there's kind of one caveat to this whole thing. And that is, if they pull this off, if they make this story good, then nothing I just said matters. All of that is completely 100% negated. Because at that point, the only thing that matters is, by God, they just told one of the most amazing stories in card game anime history. Yeah, sounds pretty crazy. I just bashed prequels. I just bashed the point of the show. But you know what? Here's the thing about any sort of fictional media. And that is that we don't need any of it. It's not just we don't need a prequel. We don't need The Lion King. We don't need the Marvel stuff. We don't need anime. We don't need any of it. Entertainment's goal is just to be this thing in your life that entertains you. What we as humans have turned it into over our existence is a whole nother story. But one thing remains true. Whenever a new form of fiction comes out, it is the job of that fiction to make it be important. It is the job of every TV show, book, movie, comic, anime, manga, whatever. It is that thing's job to make you feel like you need it, that you have to see what happens next, that you want to know, that you are glad these blanks were filled in. Prequels don't often do this because they're just relying on you loving the other thing to get you through the story. But if it can be done correctly, like X-Men First Class, like Rogue One in my opinion, like several prequels have done, that's when it becomes something special. And the thing about the story they seem to want to tell with Shin Prequel, I know it's called something else, but we're calling it Shin Prequel. The story they want to tell seems very complex and very big and very introspective and interesting because they want to tell a story about loss. They want to tell a story about healing and being able to care for another person and how to share your emotions and all these things. Because remember, the premise to this show is Masaki's parents died and Shin now has to take all this stuff on, including saving Card Capital. He's got to protect it from a land developer who I'm telling you right now, she is perfectly welcome to step on my balls and make me bleed. But he is trying to save that last bastion of his family. He's trying to save what's left of his brother, what's left of Masaki's home and childhood. He's trying to fix all that. He's trying to help this little girl out. He's trying to be there for everybody, and that can be a really beautiful story. You can tell this story about loss and emotion, and you can use card games as a vehicle for how you reconnect with people and how you get through it. And if we're using what I said about Misaki and never really getting over that, maybe that's part of it. Maybe Shin acknowledges he can't fully heal this girl, but he'll do whatever the fuck he can, and that can be a really beautiful, fascinating story to tell, and I would kill for something like that. I would love for a card game anime to take that next step and not make it about using card games to save the world. Maybe you just use it to protect this one building in this one town, in this one random point on Earth that 99% of us do not care about. I would really love that, and I would really love if it's just kind of that type of story. But if Bushiroad wants to tell that story, there's some things they need to do first. And the main thing they have to do is they have to be 100% committed. None of this, we're throwing in a magic element later. None of this, the character, he's kind of a brute, but he's also misunderstood. No. Whatever this story is, it has to be told fully, and you need to let your team do what they are there to do. Your writers need to be allowed to tell whatever level of emotion they think a scene needs. Animators need to be allowed to bring whatever level of physical and visual representation they think is correct. And you need to step down. None of this holding the reins. None of this, we only let you do what you want this time because you are following a good template. If you want this thing to succeed, then you need to trust your team to do their job. And some of you may be saying, well, it's ultimately just product placement and it's Bushiroad's money, so they have the right to keep things under their control. That is true to an extent. But if you really want to tell a story that will keep people coming back every week and will be compelling and put you in the spotlight, you need to trust the team you assembled to do what they want to do. And if what it sounds like is correct, it sounds like they want to tell a really compelling drama. And you gotta let them do that. That is what this needs to work. That is what this needs to justify its existence and prove it's more than just a prequel. It's a beautiful little story about two kids who need to take care of each other. And that is what I want out of the Shin prequel. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but I genuinely believe if this is going to be good, you can't pussyfoot. Like, it's as simple as that. You got to bring out all the stops. You have to be willing to go 100% in. You have to be willing to take that next step for the genre. That is what this needs to succeed. Because as it stands right now, a lot of people are kind of, about this whole thing. But we were very mixed on V-Series when it was announced, and that show won us over. And this show is trying to tell a much more ballsy, complex story. So it is imperative that they go full on whatever this show needs to succeed. And can we trust Bushiroad to do that? The truth is, I don't know. We've had more bad seasons of Vanguard. We've had every bad season of Buddy Fight. There is not a ton of reason to trust these guys just because they finally were a blind squirrel that found a nut. But if they can pull this off, I think they'll have made something very special. And that is what I am looking for. So all in all, that is my very complicated, very long opinions on Cardfight Vanguard Shin Prequel. Yeah, it's just going to be called that for a while. But tell me about all that below. If Shin and Misaki are actually cousins, which I think some people at some point said they were, because maybe at some point that's how something was translated. If they're cousins, I don't fucking care. I really don't. I don't need that little detail being the only comment, please. If you've got something to say something important, and most of everyone usually does. Just that I don't care if they're actually cousins. It doesn't matter. But tell me about all that below. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me for all the Cardfight Vanguard news and anime episodes to come.